this works. Excellent. Okay, so the first question people always ask me is, what's going on in the economy? And I go, well, it kind of depends on how you frame the question. Let's start with a little macroeconomics. And macroeconomics is, are we creating any jobs at all? And the answer is, yes, we are. As a matter of fact, Texas has had 42 consecutive months of job growth. The U.S. has had about 38, 39 consecutive months of job growth. That's really good news. Right? Has it been really robust job growth, especially coming out of the recession? When we thought coming out of one of the worst recessions we've ever had, we would have had 3, 4, 5% job growth a year. Did we get it? We didn't get it. But we've had steady job growth. So if I had to describe the economy, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's kind of a Goldilocks economy. Now,
sort of oily.
What?
Sort of oily.
It's going to be really oily, and you're going to see that later. Because as I unfold this economic story, part of one of the things that we're going to do, I'm going to use this word because I have an erudite audience today, all right, is the word convergent validity, all right? Nobody knows what's going on in the economy. There's not one person, one group that knows. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to put as many pieces of information together that are telling a similar story and looking for patterns and trends to help us guide things moving forward. That process of convergent validity is looking for trends and patterns. And one of those, my friend, is going to be a very oily pattern in the data, all right? With every one of these slides, one of the things you should be asking is, why do I care? On this one, the why do I care is, if you're not creating a lot of jobs, does it matter if you train everybody with a college education in all the appropriate fields? If there's no job creation, what's going to happen? You've got a whole bunch of really well-educated, unemployed people, all right? So, it does matter. I've got a handful of themes around which, these are my 10 posts here, around which this presentation will flow. Number one, the Texas economy is stronger than the U.S. economy, and by the way, the Houston economy is stronger than the Texas economy as a whole, all right? So, you can't be in a better place. We are, however, subject to a lot of the same macroeconomic forces that are going on all over the world. It won't surprise any of you to find that your kids will be operating in an environment, a global environment, where they will be working for companies and organizations, if not that don't have a particular foreign connection, as part of a foreign supply chain, as part of a foreign sales, input, output, something related to the global economy. So global matters. Number two, demographic shifts are changing. I like what Cynthia referenced Dr. Murdoch's new report. I will also refer you to a brand new report that came out of the State Data Center yesterday about projecting educational attainment by race and ethnicity. All right? Very important project. It actually dovetails with what Steve Murdoch did. So if you're curious, go to the State Data Center's website and look at Dr. Potter's new report on projected educational attainment to 2050, I think. What we look like, where we live, is changing significantly. Number three, nobody lives in Texas. How many of you are proud Texans? Proud Texans! All right. Actually, I was born in Okinawa. Came to the United States when I was 2. I lived in California when I came to Texas in 1973. 1973, I came to Texas. I got off the bus at the Continental bus station in Austin, Texas. And I walked right outside, and I had my 2 bags. I was headed to the University of Texas, and I said, where the hell is it? But after I said that, there was a car that drove by. It had a bumper sticker on the back. You know what it said? Drive 90, freeze a Yankee. Anybody remember 1973? Was anything going on in the economy in 1973? All right? Little oil shortage crisis thing going on. How was Texas doing? Fine, because our economy was very oily. All right? So we could spend as much, I don't care what the price of oil went to, that was good for the Texas economy. Drive 90, freeze a Yankee. The only reason I tell you that story is because, one, we've been doing this for a very long time. It's been a very oily economy for a very long time with many peaks and valleys in that process across the business cycle. And two, everybody should come to Texas just like I did. One of those people that said, I wasn't born here, but I got it as soon as I could. When we start talking about Texans, if you live in the Panhandle, if you live in Beaumont, if you live in El Paso, if you live in Austin, your labor market is different. So where your kids are going to live matters relative to their job opportunities. If they want to be a marine biologist, living in Galveston is a good idea. Living in Amarillo ain't. All right. If you want to be a ski instructor, living in Amarillo is not a bad opportunity. Living in Houston, not good. All right. So does where you live matter in terms of opportunities and the jobs that are going to be available for you, and there go your ability to practice your education? Does it matter where you live? And the answer is absolutely it does. And not every one of those opportunities are the same. Number 4, there have been 3 major economic tentpoles associated with the growth that we've had here in the post-recession period. 3. Number 1, and you guys see this every day, population growth. All right? Texas has added more people than any other state in the country. And because we have added more people, what else does that drive? All the population-serving industries, right? Top of that list of population-serving industries are twofold. One is healthcare, and the second one is education. All right? Absolutely. Now, the third one is eating and drinking places. All right? Otherwise known as bars and restaurants. Right? Oh, and guess what? We've got a lot of job creation associated with those. One of the reasons why college readiness is important, and going to college, or at least getting post-secondary credentials, why is that important? Because most of your students do not aspire to be able to say, would you like fries with that? That's part of their credential. All right? And yet a lot of them will, because that's one of our fastest growing industries. Now, when we start talking about the three areas, population growth, the second is the oil and gas cluster. Everything up and down the oil and gas supply chain. So it's not just oil and gas extraction and activities, support activities for mining, which is seismic and mudding and pad preparation, all that stuff. It's the manufacturing of pipes and valves, it's pipelines, transportation, everything associated with the oil and gas pipeline. And by the way, let's not kid ourselves. One of the reasons why Texas has done so much better than the rest of the country in the post-recession period is and everything related to the new technologies of fracking and horizontal drilling, and more importantly from a job creation standpoint in Texas, is because we have been doing this for so long that we have this big supply chain here in Texas. So when our guys that are going out in the Eagle Ford Shale that are out there doing some drilling, where do they go to get their pipes? Do they go to Pennsylvania? Hell no, they get them all here, all right? So we have the infrastructure here. And where does most of that infrastructure in the state reside? Right here in the great metropolitan area of Houston. All right. So as all of that stuff is going on way out in West Texas, where are they going to get their talent? Where are they going to get their supplies? Where are they going to get all of those intermediate products? And the answer is they are coming here. Now, interesting, when you go to Pennsylvania and look at the Bakken Shale and some of these other areas, they've got oil and gas extraction going on. They've got fracking. They've got a lot of stuff. Where do they go to get their supplies? They come to Texas, right? Because they don't have that infrastructure. So the fact that we not only have all this fracking and all this exploration going on here, but we have this extended supply chain, meaning all of that multiplier effect stays here in the state, and it really stays here in Houston. All right. The third one, professional and business services. Just by its very nature, what would you say? High skill or low skill industry sector? High skill or low skill? It's high skill. Actually, interestingly, it's high skill, and then there's a lot of support activities that go along with it. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Professional and business services, one of our fastest growing industries with a lot of high skill professions, and I think you'll see how that plays out here in a minute. Number 5, occupational demand is becoming more bifurcated. How many of you woke up this morning and said, I hope that economist uses the word bifurcated? Now that I've said it, you are going to put it in your vocabulary, you're going to use it regularly, because guess what? What we know about the word bifurcated relative to the labor market is a phrase that we use pretty regularly, which is haves and have-nots. All right? We've got people where there's a lot of jobs being created in the high-skill, high-wage end, and a lot of jobs being created on the low-skill, low-wage end. What's getting hollowed out is a lot of the production jobs where we have been able to use technology, offshoring, and other things to essentially hollow out part of our middle-skilled jobs, if you will. Now, interestingly, when we're talking about this, there's a real sweet spot in the community technical college area for a lot of, in fact, some of our biggest shortage areas are in manufacturing, pneumatics, robotics, numerical control, a lot of these areas, in the skilled healthcare professions, which of course are here in the Houston area in spades, and also in construction, some of these other areas. So there's a really, really sweet spot for our community technical colleges, which is why I'm really glad to hear sort of the the strong engagement of the community college system, especially their technical, the side of their program. So This bifurcation of the labor market, the reason why we care about that is because not only are we talking about skills, but we're talking about earnings. So we've got a lot more earnings being concentrated in the hands of fewer, wealthier people, and a lot more of those being concentrated in the lower skill, low wage side. Now you've got a bifurcated society, and that becomes a problem as well. So earnings do matter. Number 6, information technology is not an occupation. It is not an industry. It is not a major. Okay, it is a major. It is an industry. It's kind of an occupation. But for my purposes, one of the things I want to communicate here is that information technology really is a ubiquitous skill set that is crossing every occupational area and every industry that we have. I would prefer that you think about information technology, IT-related skills, as being a skill set that permeates everything that you do. Because if your students are not comfortable with digital and advanced technology and the creative application of that technology, and I don't care whether they're in healthcare or they're dealing with point-of-sale terminals in a retail shop, what happens? They are at a disadvantage, all right, a disadvantage. So IT skills, now this goes back even to majors, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but let me give you a little foreshadowing. One of the most important things that we see in the labor market are those people that are pursuing cross or multidisciplinary majors, right? So I don't care if you go and study psychology, that's fine with me. Why don't you get a minor in MIS? Why don't you pick up some other related skills so that you know how to manipulate data, all right, in some way, shape, or form? Because in a digital age, what is the currency? In a digital age, what is the currency? Bits and bytes. It's bits and bytes and the manipulation of bits and bytes, all right? Which means every one of us and every one of your students going forward is going to have to do that. Number 7, the current alignment between labor market demand and educational output is less than optimal. How many of you believe that your students are paying attention to labor market demand and using that to help drive their education and career decisions? How many of us are doing a particularly grand job of communicating to our students what the labor market looks like and how we can influence that choice? Or at least let me rephrase. How many of us do you think we can do better communicating some of these things? And I think the answer is there's plenty of room for improvement. And guess what? In this labor market, in this very competitive labor market, if you don't have the right skill set, which end of this bifurcated labor market spectrum are you going to end up in? Low. The low side, and that is not where we want any of our students. All right, so with that, there's a big argument about what's going on. Are there skill shortages? Are there just not enough jobs? What's the deal going on? For those of you that are really curious, there's a new book. It's called actually there's 2 books. The first and the second age of the race against the machine. All right, have you seen this race against the machine? It really is talking about the degree to which we're using technology in various jobs. And the degree to which that technology is supplanting or can be harnessed by industry to create other additional jobs. Very interesting books, both. They put these 3 out together. Why do you care? Cyclicality, we talked about that earlier. If it's just not enough job openings, how much does education matter? It still matters. It always matters. In fact, it's going to matter more, because if there's not a lot of jobs being created, then the skills, the jobs are going to go where? Only to those handful of jobs that, that the labor market really is creating. If you don't know what they are, what does that portend for those people that don't get those skills? Well, they're going to be on the weak side of that. Cyclicality. Number 2, stagnation. How many of you feel that the economy is stagnated in any way? Well, hell, you live in Houston. You can't possibly think that. All right, Houston is a city that never rests. At least that's what they say on I-10, it's a city that never rests. Right? But really, stagnation is an argument that says American dynamism is alive and well. It is alive and well. But guess what? It's also alive and well in India, China, and Singapore, and Romania, and the rest of the world. So the premium that America has earned over the last several decades, because this is the hotbed of dynamism, is a little less than it used to be, because we are now part of an integrated global economy. And the third one is the end of work. Some people believe, how many of you have read Jeremy Rifkin's book, The End of Work? Right? It's kind of the French model. You know, the French take the summer off. They average about 30 hours a week. Their goal is how many bottles of wine they can drink in a year. It's a really good kind of society. Right? How many of you remember the Jetsons? Anybody remember the Jetsons? The cartoon? All right. Who worked in the Jetsons? George worked at space in his pockets, right? Everybody remember? Bring back all these flashbacks, right? Yeah, all right. Okay, who worked? The only person I saw that ever did any really work was Rosie. Remember Rosie? What was Rosie? Rosie was the robot, and the robot was the only one that was doing any work. Everybody else was taking advantage of technology, and somehow they managed to do fine. What happens when we automate all the basic functions of life, and we take all of the routine activities out of life? What happens to our lives? Well, they get better, right? What happens to the labor market? You eliminate and restructure a lot of jobs. And there are people that are saying there's a structural shift going on, as there always has been, but we've got it coming out of this recession, maybe a little stronger, that there's this end of work, there's this technology substitution effect going on, and it's why we have a really stubborn chunk of long-term unemployed people. They simply don't have the skill sets. Now, if I were to tell you, here are the three arguments, and you had 100% change, and which percentage or what percentage would you assign to each one of these, what would you say? Would you say the economy is 100% related to cyclicality? Would you say it's 100% related to stagnation? You say it's 100% skill mismatch or skill shortage area? Or some combination of the three? Of course, clearly the answer is the latter. Now, some people believe that it's all about cyclicality. We're just not generating enough jobs to soak everybody up. All right? And there are a lot of people that are making that argument. Some of us believe in the latter, the end of work, that we've got at least 30% of the labor market that has these structural mismatches. They simply don't have the skills or the means to get the skills relative to the jobs that are being created. Depends on how you look at it. I'm going to give you 60, 10, 30 as my example, but if you want to sit around, have a couple tequilas with me, we can negotiate the percentages, all right? But keep in mind, it is a function of at least all three of these. Now, the insufficient aggregate demand argument, real quick. This is new hires. The blue line is new hires. The gray area in the middle is the recession. Notice that coming out of the recession, new hires have really taken off, right? That's good news. Look at the trajectory, really taken off. What's the other thing that really stands out on this chart for you? See that new hire level, that nice trajectory? It's still about 1 million new hires short of where we were before the recession, all right? Nice upward pattern in a Goldilocks economy, all right? But really not the same level of aggregate demand that's creating a lot of new hires. Here's the second one, separations. Interesting thing about separations is separations are both good and bad. If separations are a layoff, right? Layoffs are bad. In this case, our separations layoffs is the red line. Notice that during the recession, layoffs went way up. After the recession, layoffs came down and have kind of been going sideways a little bit, all right? The good news is if you have a job, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be able to keep your job because the layoffs are way down. The blue line is quits, all right? From an economic standpoint, when quits are going up, what does that tell you?
It's good.
Man, I see opportunity out there. I'm willing to quit this job and go get another job. So notice, quits are a very positive economic indicator with a nice trajectory. What's the other thing you notice about this chart? Quits are still well below where they were before the recession. So quits is really a measure, I think a better economic measure of consumer confidence, right? So we're just not 100% sure that there's another job out there for us. Both of these point to our aggregate demand issue. Now, let me talk a little bit about the labor market. Now I've given you all the macroeconomics I know. Does anybody have any questions? Good, that's it. Okay. Let me talk a little about the demographics, because demographics matter. This is the population change in Texas between 2000 and 2010. By the way, I'm a little glib about that macroeconomic stuff, but it's really important to know the general context of what's going on in that labor market, because a lot of these micro factors that we're going to talk about here in a minute do play into them. This is the demographics of the state. Notice that the red boxes are actually counties that have lost population in this decade. Anything interesting about that? You've got almost 80 counties, 79 counties that lost population in the decade. And where are they? Are they in Houston? They're not, as a matter of fact. They're all out there west of I-35. Notice that this triangle, we call it the Texas Triangle or the Texas Boot, responsible for almost 75% of the net population growth in the state during the decade. right there in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston area, the Dallas-Fort Worth, down to San Antonio, Austin, over to the Houston area, that Texas triangle, all right? Now notice the population growth here. Is it in Harris County, or is it out in Montgomery and Fort Bend and the surrounding counties, all right? It's a little bit of, like, you got everything here, all right? But you got faster growth out in your surrounding areas. The same thing in Dallas, right? That whole periphery around Denton, Collin, the periphery of the Dallas area, and then the whole San Antonio corridor. Now there's a second little triangle growing on down here. It's in the Corpus Christi, over to the McAllen, Laredo area. Why is that triangle being created? Why is there population growth going on there? Can you say Eagle Ford Shale? All right, and everything related to Eagle Ford Shale and exploration. Here's my why do I care about this. One, your labor force comes with your population growth. Your customers come with your population growth. You're going to start a business. Where are you going to start it? Someplace where there is population growth. That's why do I care one. Why do I care two is, where are our two fastest growing economic regions related to the oily economy? Well, they're in that Eagle Ford Shale area, right? So that Eagle Ford Shale area is all of this. And they're up there in West Texas, where we've got all that Spraberry Field and the new Klein Field and all that Midland Odessa area, Permian Basin. What do you notice about their population? There's no people. A lot of economic opportunity, a lot of opportunity. Where's their people? They're gone. So where are they going to get their labor force?
Where there's people.
Well, they're going to rent it from Houston, all right? And they're going to try to pull it from these other areas, because the truth of the matter is, lots of jobs, a lot of opportunity, no labor force to draw from. We'll see that in the numbers. Okay. The top 15 largest growth cities last year, over the last year. Anything interesting about this list? Where do you want to be? By God, I want to be in Texas, all right? Houston, number 2. Again, you've seen most of them on I-10 this morning coming into work. Anybody that's been to Austin, you know Austin is now the 4th most congested city in the country, all right? It's just an absolute mess. I thought I'd never say this, but I would rather drive in Houston than Austin these days, all right? And it's such a mess. All right, but why is that? Well, look at the job growth. Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth. What does that tell you? That tells me that the population growth that we just saw in the previous decade continues here. What's interesting about the non-Texas cities? What are they characterized by? Because I hate to tell you this, but not all your kids are going to live in Houston when they graduate. They're going to be pulled into other areas. Of these other growth areas, is there a theme that runs through them? I don't know about that one. They are known as these creative cities, all right? The whole creative culture kind of cities. If you're a Dan Pink kind of guy, right? What else about them? They are either financial hubs or technology hubs. Financial hubs or technology hubs around the country. 2 major national tent posts for jobs going forward. Here are the top 20 fastest growing counties in Texas over the last 2 years. It says fastest growing, but that's actually most jobs. Most jobs. Most people, sorry. Anything interesting about this list? Harris, Dallas, Travis, Tarrant, San Antonio, Collin, Denton, Fort Worth, Williamson. Okay, so the top, what is that? 8, 9, 10, okay, are where? Still in that Texas triangle. So those patterns continue. Anything else interesting about that list? How many of them are in the Houston area? All right, so you got Harris, Fort Bend, Montgomery, Brazoria, Galveston, okay? And all those people that actually commute out to the Caterpillar plant in Seguin from the Houston suburbs, which, by the way, there are more than a few that do that, all right? So when you look at your area, this is the fastest growing, the fastest growing area in the state, all right? And where do they come from? This is interesting. This is a migration chart. For those of you that want to see where people are coming from and coming to, if you just Google Forbes migration, you'll get this chart. The aquamarine lines on this are inbound migration. the orange lines are outbound migration. The net change in terms of migration, and this is based on tax returns on migration, is 81,000 people have come into the city, all right? And as Texans, what do we do with migrants? We welcome them, right? We embrace their skill sets. And what else do we do? We have to deal with all of the challenges of extra people in our society. And that means they're in our schools, they're in our social safety nets, they are on our roads, they are dealing with all of those related issues. Now, where do people come from? Where do people come from when they come to Houston? The answer is, where do they not come from? Right? They come from everywhere. Okay. Here's the unemployment rates in the state of Texas. These are from February 28th, the most recent ones we have, from February 2014. These are the unemployment rates. I said nobody lives in Texas, right? Nobody lives in Texas. Well, here's the unemployment rate as an interesting variable here, because if you're in Midland, Odessa, what does your unemployment rate look like? For those of you that took an economics class someplace along the way, you'll know that they used to tell us that the natural rate of unemployment is 4.5%, 5%. That means that rate really can't persist for very long before economic forces take over and drive it higher, all right? 3%. In Midland, if you can fog a mirror, you can get a job. And in fact, all right, that's a technical term, by the way. All right. By the way, in Midland, if you want to work at Wendy's, right? Wendy's, pay $15 an hour and sign-on bonuses. All right, $15 an hour to work at Wendy's. All right. How many of you have been to the Midland, Odessa area lately? Anybody been out there? Okay. So I was out there 3 months ago. I stayed at the MGM Elegante Hotel, all right, which is their 5-star hotel. You been there? What? Yeah. Okay, 5-star hotel, right, which is actually kind of warmed over Holiday Inn. You know, it makes the Hilton here looks like an absolute Taj Mahal. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It actually is a Taj Mahal, but it really makes it even look bigger. It's a warmed over Holiday Inn. What do you think I paid?
$100.50.
$100.50? Dream on. $2.99 a night. $2.99 a night. All right. Why? Because it is 100% full all the time. All right. Halliburton's got them all, right? The funny thing is, I'm sitting in this room at MGM Elegante, and I'm going, I can't believe that I paid $2.99 for this room. All right. And, you know, my feet are tucked underneath the television set, And this commercial comes on, and it's for the Atlantis Hotel in the Bahamas, right? You seen this? Right? Beautiful water slides, it's gorgeous. Come to Bahamas, and how much are the room nights that they're offering? $99 a night. This is wrong, all kinds of wrong here. All right, now, does location matter? And the answer is yes, it absolutely does. And so these low unemployment rates in the Midland Odessa area, they are crying for what? Workers. All right. Do they have significant skill shortages? Yes, in some areas, very significant skill shortages. Do they also have general labor shortages? And the answer is absolutely they do. So, if you come down here to the Brownsville, Harlingen, McAllen, Edinburgh area that have historically 9, 10, and higher % unemployment rates, what is their issue? Do they have population growth? Do they have labor force growth? Do they have a lot of workers? And the answer is yes, they do. What do they not have?
Jobs.
Actually, they don't have 2 things. They don't have economic activity, all right? So they don't have enough jobs. And what else do they not have? They have a very low percentage of their population with appropriate skill set, all right? Very low percentage with high school graduates, and much less than a post-secondary education. So whatever businesses are going to locate in that area to take advantage of that labor force will be what kind of businesses? Those that can take advantage of large numbers of people with relatively low skill sets, relatively low wage. What does that do to drive the regional economy and the money that's circulating? Not much. Sir?
Is it still the old figure that about 3% of the population are unemployed?
You know, if you break down the unemployment rate, you know, we have cyclical and frictional and, you know, causes and all the rest of that stuff. It varies by area depending on how robust your local industrial structure is. But the answer is, the premise is yes. That's the foundation for the natural rate of unemployment, is that you can never get below some area because there'll always be people that are either unemployable or are always between jobs, all right? Because, you know, it's a dynamic economy, right? So there's always somebody quitting and leaving and quitting and leaving, and they're maybe unemployed for periods, but it's not because they don't have the skill sets, it's because they're kind of between jobs. So yes, they're, you know, between the seriously structurally unemployed or the unemployable, as you said, and those people that are frictionally unemployed that have a lot of volatility to them, there's this, they represent probably, I don't know, 50, 60% of the unemployment rate. So when you get an unemployment rate of 3% here, what are you talking about? Man, there's very little margin going on there from aggregate. Okay. Which industries are adding job growth in Texas? These are the industries adding the most jobs between February 2013 and February 2014. YOY is wow. No, it's year over year. Sorry. So, notice the very diverse and broad job growth we've had in the state. This is really good for an economy because it means that there are a lot of different opportunities in a lot of different fields. What we see here, trade, transport, and utilities. Those are retail trade, wholesale trade jobs, transportation, utilities, leisure and hospitality, professional business services. Notice that the percent change on the far side, a very nice balance here. The one I want to point out is manufacturing. So you look at that number and you go manufacturing, net 4,200 jobs over the year. By the way, the fact that it's red is just a highlight, it's not negative, right? Plus 4,200 job growth, 0.5% job growth a year. That doesn't sound very robust. So does that mean there's no job opportunities in the manufacturing sector? Absolutely, it does not mean that. What it means is that the manufacturing sector is part of what Schumpeter used to call creative destruction. There's a whole lot of people coming in the back door and leaving out the front door and vice versa. There's a lot of volatility. The manufacturing sector, do you have any Schlumberger representatives? Anybody work with Schlumberger around here? Charles, you guys do any work with Schlumberger?
Absolutely.
Numeric control, process, programming and the like? Schlumberger will hire numerical process control folks starting at about $60,000 a year, all right? They like them to have a credential, but if they get like 3/4 the way to a credential, they'll pick them up and pay for the rest of their education. And they'll start them at $60,000 a year. And they'll take every one of them that Charles can produce, all right? So there are a lot of areas that are going on in terms of manufacturing where the skill sets. Industrial technicians is one of the fastest growing, most demand fields that we have. Toyota, Boeing, Schlumberger, almost every major manufacturing company crying for industrial, what they call industrial maintenance technicians. Those are people that know how to make the assembly lines and the processes flow, tend to the equipment, pneumatics, servo control, all of that rest stuff. For those of you in the academic community, you go, why do we care about that stuff? Well, because in a very oily economy, one of the things that drives job growth is making sure that all of those companies are making money and hiring all those accountants and computer people and the like, all right? So those technician positions are extremely important. Now, here's some industry employment between the third quarter 2011 and third quarter, essentially the last 2 years. Here's the industry job growth. Notice two things. The fastest growing industry on this list is food service, eating, drinking places. All right? High skill or low skill? Low skill. Professional and technical services. High skill or low skill? High skill. Look at the wage. AWW is average weekly wage. Anything interesting? Which one of those do you want to support your family on? Administrative and support service, by the way, is essentially personnel supply services. Cocktail party factoid number one. About 12% of your 2012 four-year college graduates, by the way, that in Texas took 6.3 years to graduate with that four-year degree. All right. About 12% found their first job in personnel supply services. All right, it's becoming a very important part of how the labor market functions. Any other pattern that you see throughout this area, throughout these industries? Any other interesting pattern? You see a little bit of education, a little bit of social service, a little bit of healthcare, and a lot of oil and gas related stuff. All right. Let me focus in just a little bit on this professional technical services. You say, well, Rich, what are those? Well, here's some more concrete examples of what some of those industries are. Architectural engineering services, computer design services. Computer design services actually added more jobs than any other underneath this category. Computer systems design services, high skill or low skill. How many psychology majors are they looking for? Management and technical consulting services. Legal services, accounting and bookkeeping services. How many psychology majors are they looking for? I'm sure there's a couple. All right. What do you see about this? Well, let me look at this. Here is the occupational staffing pattern for that industry. In other words, if you look at all of the occupations that are in this industry and what that staffing would look like, the occupations that make it go, if you will, this is what they look like. Anything interesting about this list? Does one of the words that I used before come back to you? Interesting bifurcation. A lot of the education preferred here, the education preferred side, for the bachelor's degree and the associate's degrees up, all right, also have a support infrastructure associated with them. So a lot of high skill and a lot of low skill related to this sector. All right. In Houston, these are hires in the metropolitan area and hires and earnings by gender. All right. I'm going to make one plea today, and I'm not going to belabor it. But when you have an economy that's driven by oil and gas related kinds of things, how many of our women go into these oil and gas related fields? Not too many. All right, not too many. So it becomes a very non-traditional field for us. And yet, oil and gas related jobs up and down the supply chain are some of the highest paying industries that we have, some of the highest paying jobs. If you look at this list, this is where hires on the left-hand side, females, and the average monthly earnings. On the right-hand side are males, average monthly earnings. All right? These are actual new hires. So when their Social Security number shows up on the tax records, we count them. So they're not estimates or surveys, they're actual administrative record counts. Anything pop up here for you?
Women are still underpaid for an equal amount of work.
That's the first thing I want to know. These are new hire earnings. This is not for everybody. This is all the new hires. This is the first time your Social Security number shows up with a new employer. Notice the average wages for all men is at about $4,000 a month. Look what it looks like for women. All right. Now, why is that? Is it because women are just grossly underpaid? If you think I'm going to step into that argument, all right. But here's what I will tell you from a data standpoint. Look at the difference in the industrial structure. Look at the differences in which men and women are finding these jobs. And look at the degree to which the industries in which they're finding those jobs, all right, are high-paying, traditionally high-paying and low-paying industries. Now, is there at least some component of that underpaid related to industry and job career choice? And the answer is yes, it is. Now, your earnings are not everything, but when you look at it, on the male side, you've got an awful lot of these earnings that are coming in high-wage industries, which are driving up wages for men, even that have lesser credentials, that women are not participating in from a wage standpoint, from an employment standpoint, and from an education standpoint that are really important. One of them is information technology related stuff, and the other is engineering and everything related to the oil and gas supply chain. Two of our highest paying industries in the state that have very low female participation, all right? If you're a woman in an engineering field, if you are a female petroleum engineer, not only are you writing your own ticket, but you are getting anywhere from a 5 to 10% wage premium above a male. All right? We can just communicate some of this to our kids. All right. Okay. How many of you agree with this statement? Technology should be deployed wherever possible to free humans from drudgery and repetitive tasks. How many of you agree with this? All right? Everybody want to get rid of all those repetitive and drudgery tasks? Right? How many of you in favor of that? How many of you think, if I do that, there goes my job? Interestingly, this is a quote from Larry Page with Google. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who earn honest livings from drudgery and repetitive tasks. And that is true. How many of you are working on your taxes or just finished your taxes? How many of you use Kiplinger Tax Cut or one of those little computer packages to walk through and do it? All right. My dad works at the ripe old age of 83, works for H&R Block still, does taxes. Personally, I don't take my taxes to my 83-year-old dad at H&R Block, but that's another story. Don't tell him I said that.
That's because you make.
But what do I use? I use H&R Block Tax Cut. And I sit down with my dad, and he's an H&R Block, and he brings up what he does, and I got a little package in his laptop next to me, and guess what? Almost identical. The interrogatory process, almost identical, all right, in the office. Now, how can I do my taxes, and I have a skilled tax preparer doing the exact same thing? How can I do that? What allows me to do that?
Technology.
Technology, because those 12 feet of tax code, all guess what? All compressed into a series of decision rules that can be put on a disk, all right? Does technology substitute jobs like my dad's job eventually? All right, and the answer is yes. Is it happening in other places? Absolutely. Here are some of the disruptive technologies. I'm going to get back to that issue in a second. Here are some of the disruptive technologies of how might things change going forward. Now, you guys hear a lot about this. You guys hear a lot about this. Charles, I know you hear a lot of, well, we've got a new technology and we've got to have the skill sets to be prepared about this. And you get a lot of, really, if you build it, they will come kinds of things. So I cannot tell you about all the skill sets or the occupational demand that's associated with some of these things. But they're clear, and they're going to make a difference. Whether they make a difference in the labor market or not, I can't tell you yet. So I can tell you, advanced oil and gas exploration technologies have, renewable energy has, continues to, advanced materials, 3D printing, which, by the way, I think is the coolest thing. Does anybody have a 3D printer? All right, if you sat down with one of these CAD-CAM things, like an architectural CAD-CAM, draw a housing elevation, print the button, in like 15 minutes you see, you see the whole elevation there in a model. It's just way cool. You and I will be printing our livers, all right, in 10 years. As we have stem cells, we put the stem cells into our 3D printers. All right, we get an exact replica of our own livers, and we print our own new livers. Pretty cool, huh? You ready to do that? Okay, your liver may not be as bad as mine. All right, that's not anybody's problem, right? But think about that: the ability to actually use 3D printing technologies and new materials to print organs. All right, will it happen? Some of us believe absolutely it's already happening in experimental animal things. All right, next generation genomics, that's a big deal. Autonomous cars, I don't care about that. Cloud technology and the Internet of everything. The Internet of everything. You got your little device? It's got your little USB right there? All right. How many of you have a Nest? You know, a little automatic thermostat? How many of you have the AT&T whole digital life thing? Anybody have one of those? How many of you seen the commercial where the guy the kid comes in and goes, oh, did you stop by the house? I go, yeah, I did. Block everything up? Yeah, absolutely. Takes a look at it, right? And he says, well, the water's on and the front door. He goes, yeah, click, 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 click. It works that way, doesn't it?
Watch my contrast again?
Yeah. And are you happy with this? Do you feel uncertain with your ability to have anybody hack into your house?
I am an empowered man.
I love that. Just give me a hard time. This is the wave of the future. How many of you were sitting around going, God, I did record the voice on Tuesday? And you go, you reverse, app, boom, boom, record. I didn't miss it after all right? Technology is grand. Now all of that technology, what is it? Why do we care about that technology? What are the skill sets that are underlying that technology application? What are they? They are IT-related skill sets, all right? Now, examples. What is missing in this picture?
People.
People? I'm sure there's some people in there someplace. How about this one? What is missing here?
People.
Who is doing the work in this environment? The consumer, all right? Where are the people? This is a Valero refinery, all right? Billions of dollars of CapEx investment going on here. How many people does it take to run the whole damn thing? Just a handful of highly skilled process technology kinds of people, all right? What about this? This is Nike's distribution center. Where are the people? There's a couple people down there. They look particularly busy. Right. Anybody know what this is?
Europe.
This is in Europe. This is FIBO, the fastest growing fast food company. Fastest growing fast food company in Europe. What is this? This is an automat. This is an automat. All right? You go in, you put your money in, you grab your food, and you walk out. What have we just done? we have eliminated entry-level jobs for people that used to start a lot of fast food joints, all right? There are people that sit behind that. There are distribution deliverers, there are cooks someplace, maybe not locally, all right? But there are people behind that, but they look different than what they do today. What about this guy? Is this IT? This is a guy that's sitting, dealing with a server, a rack server. Not your rack, a rack server, all right? The rack spaces of the world, one of our fastest growing industries in the state. What is this? Is this IT? This is a numeric process control machine. It is absolutely IT skills. What is this? This is our audio media digital mixing board. Is our multimedia world a digital world? And the answer is absolutely it is. What is this? Electronic health records. All those demand for registered nurses, will they all be doing critical care on the floor? Or will some of them, and in fact an increasing percentage of them, being doing administrative tasks where they are tied to things like electronic health records? For those people that are doing electronic health records, they would much prefer to hire a nurse and teach them the IT skills than to take an IT nerd and teach them how the medical terminology and all the rest of that stuff works. Right? And that is true, by the way, which is a very important occupation, especially for women. Interesting opportunities. All right. And the space station. And what about this? Point of sale related stuff. Who's doing, where's all the activity going on here? It's in the devices, and who is taking care of the devices? IT skilled related people. It's a digital age. Does it surprise you that the skill sets that are showing up in some of these fastest growing areas are digital related skills? All right. Here's the argument for skills. All right, the argument for skills. Anybody recognize any of these occupations? By the way, one of the fastest growing occupations on this list is big data integration engineer. You know all of that data that's being collected by Yahoo and Google and Amazon and all the rest of that stuff, right? Who does something with it?
Brad needs some of those.
All right, you grab all that data, you look for patterns. So the next time, I'll tell you, it's really cool. I ordered the first version of Race Against the Machine. 2 weeks later, I was back on Amazon again. You know what popped up? Advertisement for the second Race Against the Machine. Why? Because they are looking at my patterns and be able to do that. That is a hot field. Okay, where are the job postings? Where is the current activity going on right now? So, by the way, the takeaway from all of that technology stuff is, as our world changes, as technology changes occupational opportunities, you got to keep up with it. How do you keep up with it? You don't do it by sitting in your own offices. You do it by integrating with the business community, talking to partners, and having sessions like this where you're getting all of that input, because that world is changing very quickly around you. Where are the job postings? What's out there now? It wouldn't surprise you that most of the job activity is in the Texas Triangle area, right? This is what they look like from an occupational standpoint. Any surprises here? Based on everything we've talked about, are there any surprises here?
A little surprising about the salespeople being still so high.
You know, that is interesting, but I can tell you, Charles, that area of non-technical sales rep, wholesale and manufacturing has been showing up in the top 10, top 15 for the last 5 years. All right? And where do those psychology graduates go to work? They actually go to work in service-related sales. But here's the other thing. When you're in a recovery, when you're in economic recovery, what's the one thing that people start doing? They start promoting their products. Who's promoting the products? You got to have people out there in the front lines. How many of your kids that go to college and get a degree in psychology? Did you notice I tend to pick on psychology graduates? I don't mean to do that, all right? Okay, so the psychology graduates, when they go and they get their degree, how many of them think that their job opportunities would be an enterprise rental car, okay, or in sales opportunities? How many of them think that? How many know? How many make that connection? And the answer is not very many of them. Other interesting thing you see here, interesting bifurcation of job opportunities. Here's what they look like in Houston. By the way, Houston so much mirrors the rest of the state that these two lists hardly, very seldom look dissimilar. They almost look the same. Anything interesting here? Those 2012 wages is not for the actual job postings. They are the average wage in that occupation. So look at the wages associated with this. Is there a difference in wages paid to certain occupational areas? This is 16 through 30. Is there a difference? Do some occupational areas and some skill sets command more in the labor market? The answer is absolutely they do. This is what they look like for Austin. In Austin, there are two kinds of job openings. There are IT job openings, and all of those people that support the people that are in IT jobs. These are our fastest growing occupations. Fastest growing occupations. Projected through 2020, you'll see an interesting, again, mix of degrees and non-degrees, and you'll see our 3 economic tempo's are persisting through 2020. This essentially is what we think it looks like going through 2020. This is the labor market for those of you that are right-brain people that need a graphic. This is the way it works, all right? About 50% of all of our job growth we see in the low-skill, low-wage side. About 22, 23% are higher education opportunities. Those are 4 years or more. Caveat, there's another 8 or 10% that sit on top of that where you can't even compete for that job unless you have the degree, even though the work itself may not require a 4-year degree. But if you can't compete it, you can't even, your application wouldn't be considered unless you have that degree. So you're talking about 30% on the top, about 50% on the bottom, and the stuff that's in the middle. Now the sweet spot are the ears of my chalice here. By the way, this is a chalice. This is not a toilet bowl for those of you who are trying to place the graphic. Ears of my chalice, the sweet spot, the fastest growing area right here are these associate degree occupations. Now, let me talk about education, wrap this up. I know I'm over time, I'm sorry. Can I have about 10 minutes while I screw you up, Cynthia? Okay. Let's establish some reasonable expectations about the education system. The U.S. education and employment system is not designed to be tightly coupled as in other countries like Germany, all right? With its highly prescribed education and career tech. Instead, the U.S. has a fluid system in which career paths can be pursued through a range of disciplines and educational experiences. Is the American education system designed to take kids, tell them exactly what they're going to do, test them out, and put them in those jobs? Is that who we are? No. It's never designed to be that way. So what happened as the system is unfolded? It means we don't really take kids and we don't track them. We really don't track them. We say, here's your education, and once we dump them out of the institution, what do we say? Good luck, we hope you learned something. All right? That's kind of the way our system works. And then the dynamism of the American economy was supposed to take care of the rest. Some of that still works. And in Houston, that still works. All right? In other words, all your kids are going to get a job around here. All right? As long as the economy is oily, okay, people are going to get jobs, or they'll have job opportunities. The question is what those job opportunities will look like going forward. Our job is to make sure that these kids down here, these dropouts or potential dropouts, just get closer and closer and closer to being able to get the good jobs. All right? Because the deal is, this dropout here, have you ever seen people that have dropped out of school, just didn't cut it in school, and been able to make this shot in order to get a good job from here? Have you seen it? Sure. Absolutely, all right? But what happens if we move them a little farther, a little closer? What happens if we can get them to high school graduates? Is that shot a little easier? Absolutely. Is it still tough to make a half-court shot? Yeah, it is. But if we can get them all the way up underneath college grad, when I say college grad, 4-year, 2-year, advanced industry certifications, okay? If we can get them that close, can we get them underneath? Have you ever seen any kid choke a layup? Right? Have you seen them get them everything, they still can't get it? Yeah. But the odds are, if we can get them a lot closer, that's what we try to do. Do you think your kids understand any of this? Charles Schwab asked teenagers what they think reality is, and they asked them, what is your expected starting salary, and what will your salary be once you get established in a career? What do you think they said? Everybody got a number in their head? What do you think their kids think about? Got a number? Starting salary, $73,000 a year. So those $60,000 a year Schlumberger jobs that you introduce a kid to, what's the first thing he says? Pay cut, ain't doing that. All right. How about the second number? Established in a career. Hold on your socks. Boys, $162,000 a year. All right. Now, there is, by the way, a program to help you deal with this. We call it a reality check. www.texasrealitycheck.com. If you have never done this, I highly encourage you to go there. It allows students to put a budget together, a lifestyle budget together, and at the end, it says, okay, here's what it's going to cost you. Now let's look at the occupations that allow you to be able to afford your lifestyle aspirations, and guess what? By the time they get to the end, they go, damn, I'm going to need some education, all right? Which is the goal. Okay. Does education matter? And the answer is yes, it matters. Earnings are higher and unemployment rate is lower the more education you have. This is clear. Is every educational program the same? And the answer is no. There are ranges within each major. There are associate degree programs that pay well more than 2/3 the bachelor's degrees. Right? And there are some associate degree programs, if you go across this, that pay as much as professional and doctoral degrees. All of them? No. Some of them? Absolutely there are. So these ranges are occupations within each of these skill areas, and so it does matter what you study. Now, before I get accused of being a labor market economist, we do not read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race. And the human race is filled with passion, and medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. How many of you agree with this? Can I have an amen? Amen. Now, this is from Job Keating, Dead Poets Society. Everybody remember this movie? All right. Okay. The question is, what do we pay poets? My favorite line in that movie, for those of you that remember, is, why do we write poetry? Why do we write poetry? To woo women. All right. Love that. I love poetry, but I could not afford my mortgage on my poetry. All right. So here's the deal. When we look at the labor market, here are some of the highest earning college programs. The highest earning college programs. Anything interesting about these? While you're thinking about these, here are the lowest earning, and these are 4-year programs. Here are the lowest earning college programs. Highest earning, lowest earning. Is there a difference between the highest earning and the lowest earning? And the answer is yes. Are there common threads between the highest earning and the lowest earning? Here are the highest earning associate degree programs. Is this list closer to this list or this list in terms of earnings? Right? Now, if you don't think that your community college system has a lot to offer as a partner in this process, especially relative to the labor market, you are not looking at the same data that I'm looking at. And by the way, here are the top paying IT certifications, 2013 average salaries. Now, not all of these are achievable in a year. Some require experience. Some of these require a couple of years along the way. Anything interesting about these? There's a lot of money associated with these. This is the theme you take away with it. Math is money. If the more accomplished you are at applied mathematics, not the more classes you take, the better you are at applied mathematics, the more money you can make. Here is what our kids are doing now. This is what our kids are doing now. These are the grads and the 1-year post-exit earnings. Anything interesting about this list for you? We just spent the last hour talking about what's going on in the labor market. All right? This is what our kids are majoring in. Is there anything missing from this list? I've heard STEM. You know, there's a big argument raging now as to whether there really is a STEM shortage or not, a STEM shortage of workers or not. I'm going to argue that the premise is wrong. All right? First of all, STEM really shouldn't be STEM. It should be STEAM. All right? And STEAM is STEM plus the creative application of STEM skills. All right? So the creative application of STEM skills is STEAM, one economist interpretation of what that probably ought to be. But when you look at these, do you see any STEM skills? And the answer is kind of not enough. And does it matter going forward? In other words, 1 year post-exit is fine, but we know those liberal arts graduates make a lot more money 10 years, 20 years down the road. Well, in some cases that is absolutely true. You've got some very bright people coming out of your institution that are going to do well in the labor market regardless of what they study. This is if you took everybody that's employed and those people that had a baccalaureate degree or more. This is everybody near 25 and older in the state of Texas. This is the major that they had. For all those who are baccalaureate or more, these are the majors. Does the way these parse out, do they seem consistent with the 1 year post-exit? I'm not saying all those chemical engineering are working in the field of chemical engineering today. They could be doing all kinds of interesting things. But does your major matter going forward in terms of earnings? Not necessarily UTILs, which is the economist version for satisfaction or units of satisfaction. All right? But in terms of earnings, does it persist over a career? And the answer is, yes, it does. All right. By the way, for those of you that want to see what's going on in the labor market, exiters by program, post-exit earnings, 1, 2, 10 years, how much people make by institution, by major. Texas Cruise is a program that has been released. It's on the coordinating board's website. You can say, what do those people that went to Sam Houston State and majored in information technology, how do they earn and how fast do they amortize their debt relative to those people that studied business at the University of Texas at Austin? All right? So we use this hopefully as a tool to help inform our kids. Now, here's my wrap up. Regional employers always say, when we say, what does business want? This is what they tell us. Good communication skills, the appropriate technical knowledge. Can you work with people who are of a different age, race, gender, and education level than you? Because guess what? That's what the labor market looks like. Do you have a can-do and pleasant attitude? Oh my gosh. I cannot tell you how many businesses tell us, if you just have those kids come in and say they're happy to be here, they're honored to be considered for this job, and they want to show up every day and say, I'm happy to be here, all right, and I will do whatever it takes to make this happen. It's an attitude thing, all right? It's an attitude thing. And business is really starting to complain about attitude. Now, all these hiring authorities are a bunch of old fogies like me, all right? And what do they want to see? They want to see people who look like them, all right, in terms of discipline and attitude, all right? A lot of these new firms that are hiring younger people, they don't care as much about some of that stuff, a little more flexible. But the truth of the matter is, these are some of the things they say. So preparing your kids for the 21st century, we think is a balance of 4 things. Balance of will and skill. 1, strong academics, meaningful high school diploma, an appropriate post-secondary education, and appropriate technical skills. But my question to you is it enough? And this very competitive labor market, the answer is, in most cases, it's not. Here's the second part. These workplace basics, getting up with communication skills, getting along with others, critical thinking skills, the ability to show up on time, leadership, followership, all of those soft skills, increasingly important to business. Rick Stevens of the Boeing Corporation says, there's not one specific thing or skill people have to work for us, but I can tell you why we fire people. We hire for hard skills and we fire for soft skills, all right? When I say soft skills, don't get all freaked out. Just think about it this way. In every course and program you offer, are you teaching behavioral metrics as well as course content? And there's no reason why you can't do it in every program. Is it enough? Going forward in the 21st century, we call this distill. The ability to continue to build stackable credentials, informal education, on-the-job learning, climbing wall, all right? What's a stackable credential? A stackable credential is like the veterinarian who got a taxidermy degree. Either way, you get your pet back. So, oh come on, I gotta do something for myself, all right?
We don't want
The ability to continue to build your credential base is an important thing and a lifelong learning process. And how many of you remember the little stair-step career path thing? Right? Gone, right? And then we got this career lattice thing where you kind of go sideways down and up before you moved on. Gone. Here's what it looks like today. It's called the climbing wall, all right? Everyone is trying to get comfortable on the wall and everybody finds themselves at a different place, moving at a different pace with a unique support system, all right? So, see these 2 people on the wall? See that guy up there in the white? Every one of us is here someplace, right? We're hanging on someplace. Every one of us. This guy in the white looks a little uncomfortable, right? What's his support system doing? This guy down in the black, what is he doing? Is he paying any attention? He's on his cell phone, I'm almost sure. Look at the gal on the right. Orange. Is she hanging on? Yeah. All right. She look a little more comfortable? Yeah. What's her support system doing? Paying attention. They look like they're even making eye contact. She even looks like she's smiling up there. All right? I ask you, which of these do you want to be? Do you want to be the support system on the right or the support system on the left? And I know the answer to that already. So going forward, the last thing is will. Our kids have a responsibility. It's not going to be given to them. They got to make some sacrifices along the way. And guess what? This really freaks them out. All right? The willingness to start at a lower level, a lesser wage than they might already be expected, guess what? They're not going to start all those jobs at $73,000 a year. In a different locale, guess what? Some of the jobs that are going to be created may be clear across town. Oh, that's a shame, all right? And may have to suck it up a little bit. And last, showing flexibility and initiative, because most of the businesses they go to work for are going to be fluid. They're going to be changing. They're going to be adding skill sets. They're going to be changing job descriptions. The ability to show initiative and be flexible is a really important criterion for business. So with that, a balance between will and skill, I think, is what we're all shooting for. With that, I thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.